law that will compel government officials across the board to send their children to public schools. And then on the other side of the coin, the members of parliament, both of them on the education committee in parliament, says no way. That will actually be, in one case, an abuse of our human rights and our right to choice, the choice of where to put our children. If our children decide to school abroad, so be it. What's your take? Ghana Connect. We are connecting Ghana and beyond after the break. The suggestions that emerged this week is from NAT. It is a radical proposition, but one that stirred a bit of controversy. This is a NAT president laying out the biggest teacher union's position on how to deal with the problem of leaving many children still sitting on bare floors to study in classrooms without roofs or under trees and without textbooks.
And because those are duty bearers, their children are there. The minister's son is in front of him. The judges, the magistrates, the journalists, all their children are in this school. So when there is no furniture, they will come together and procure furniture for the children. But when it comes to the public school, the director of education child is not in the school. The DC child is not in the school. The police inspector in the district, his or her child is not in the school. It is these poor farmers who can afford maybe 5 cedis a month or a week, their children in the school. But these are the people who are feeding the nation.
Will not advocate a policy that compels the policymakers, the duty bearers, to compulsorily, if they have children at school-going age, send them to the public schools?
I think that is the way forward. Because elsewhere, if you go to Finland, if you're a public sector worker, your child will be in public school. So that is the way forward to go. And we'll take it up. And make sure that our parliamentarians do the needful and making sure that at least if you are a minister, a director, and you don't have your word in the public school, can you imagine a director's son a line on the floor writing?
No, I can't.
You cannot imagine. Imagine that a director of education, the son of the grandson, is lying on the floor. Children find themselves in a various districts. And they have a district. So the director, the assembly members there, would they send their children to go and lie on the floor?
So we checked with Parliament to see if this is something that they will buy into. Remember that they belong to the political class. They themselves are extension of the government, and they have the power to make this happen through legislation. We had 2 members of the Education Committee, the ranking member of the Education Committee and the vice chairman of the Education Committee. Both of them had to answer the same question. Will they support this?
So how do you expect that person, if he wants to send his or her son to a private school, there should be a law to prevent him or her from doing so? I think it is to be against the human rights of any individual, because it's a matter of choice. I don't want my child to be in a public school.
If I have my child, in fact, I have my case abroad, and you are saying that because I've become a member of parliament, I should bring my children from abroad to come and school here. It's not going to be feasible. I think the conversation is more on moral suasion. When you are in public office, you want to demonstrate by example, and that you are sending your case there, to be able to send your case to public school to demonstrate that you have confidence and to also instill confidence in the public that, look, even this person has their children in the public school. That is, that's an alternative. But if you are enacting a policy that is not feasible, there's no need in doing that.
So, 2 positions there expressed against the position of NAT. And it sort of lays out the foundation for our conversation tonight. Where do you stand on this? Are you in the corner of NAT? NAT says, and NAT is the biggest teacher union we have in this country, and they are in the classrooms. They see these children on a daily basis sitting on the floor in an attempt to teach them. They don't have the textbooks. They don't even have the teacher packs in some cases. They say, look, we've been trying to solve this problem for so long, we haven't fixed it. The way to fix this is to compel the president, his ministers, the MPs, the people in power and authority, get all of them to send their children to the basic schools or to the schools, to the public schools generally, and see the transformation that you get. And he asked the question, rhetorical question, can you imagine the education director's child sitting on a floor under a tree without textbook studying? And then you have the other side of the coin. The political class, the members of parliament say, no way. One of them says, well, I have a child abroad. If you want me to bring my child down, that is not feasible. It's not going to happen. Which of these two sides do you belong? We're going to hear from you tonight here on Ghana Connect. 055-111-11997 is a WhatsApp line. You can join. I want to hear particularly from parents. I want to hear from you because you have your children in some of these schools. So join us. Send me a WhatsApp message on the line I've just mentioned. I'll get my my producers to give you a call so you could participate in the conversation. It's about our children. So let's have it. And will this necessarily solve the problem, by the way? Or is it a simplistic view of this very complex problem? Let's look at that. Connecting with us right now via Zoom is Dr. Henry Gottenafo, an educationist in the UK and connects via Zoom. Hello, Doc. Hello, Doc. Dr. Henry Gottenafo.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you for connecting, Doc. I'm grateful. Gabriel is a PhD candidate at the Converse University of Budapest, Hungary. Gabriel is researching fee-free policies in sub-Saharan Africa to assess their utility to social and human development. Hello, Gabriel. Hello, Gabriel. Gabriel, please unmute for me. I can hear you. All of you, please unmute and let's have a conversation. Peter Anti is with the education think tank iFirst and connects with us also on Zoom. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Evans.
Great to have you, Peter. Gabriel, are you on? Okay, let's hope that we get Gabriel back on. We can hear his voice. We can also connect now to Emmanuel Parkojo. He's a trained and certified teacher with 27 years experience in the classroom. Hello, Emmanuel. Hello, Emmanuel.
Hi, Evans. Good evening.
Great to have you, Emmanuel. We'll be connecting to the ranking member on the Education Committee of Parliament, Mr. Peter Nochu. Hello, Mr. Nochu. Okay, we'll get him to connect. In the studio with me is Jojo, the man who started.
Hi, Evans. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Great. Thank you very much for connecting.
Okay.
My colleague Raymond Aqua is connecting. We tasked him to do some research on how this works elsewhere. And he has some very interesting insights to share with us. He is connecting with us on Zoom as well. As I said, Jojo is with me in the studio. And we'll be connected to Finland because the NAT, in pitching this policy, in pitching this solution, pointed directly to Finland as they were taking their inspiration from Finland. We'll connect to Finland shortly. I'll tell you who's going to be connecting with us, but stay with us for that here on Ghana Connect because we want to go to these countries and learn from them. But let's start with a general question to all of you, very, very briefly, so I can know where you all stand. Dr. Henry Gottenafo, let me start with you. Where do you stand? Do you stand with the teacher union NAT that compel the government officials and those in government and in power send their children to the public schools, or do you stand with the two parliamentarians who say no way, that's going to be violating human rights? Where do you stand? Yes or no to yes, as in yes, I'm with NAT. No, I'm with the MPs.
I'm with Nat. I think last week I was on this forum. First of all, let me say very good evening to you all, to the listeners, and also to Mr. Antipate. Good to see you. Good to see you all. I think it's very important to reiterate that last week I said this on the forum. Evans, it looks like I'm sure you're not here, but I did say it last week.
I listened and I heard you suggest that.
Oh, thank you so much. So, great. I mean, I put this across as one of the possible solutions to mitigate all these issues that we have, and so the issues that we have in education. And I say yes to that suggestion in the sense that if you're preparing soup for someone to eat and you're not going to be eating that soup, sometimes you really don't care how much, how well that soup tastes or what ingredients you put in there. And if you're going to be eating of that soup, you might as well make sure that the way you prepare it and the ingredient that goes in there is something that you'll be very happy to put in your body and see how your organs react to it. So seriously, I think, yes, on the other side, people might say, if you come into England, and I'm going to use this as an example.
So
if you come into England,
we'll expand.
the monarchs.
Yeah, hold on for a minute. We'll come and expand on the point. I think
we'll come to that. All right,
yeah,
fine.
we'll expand on that.
I'll go with that.
So you're for it. Great.
I'll go with that. I think it's a good point. Yes.
Gabriel?
Thank you. Yes.
Gabriel, I still struggle to hear you. Can you hear me, Gabriel?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, there's a connection challenge with yours, but speak. Let's see if it improves as you go. Where do you stand on this? Where do you stand, not all with the concerns raised by the two members of parliament?
Yes, I think though the intention is good, but I think the way of it can be effective. So for this on by law, I think I'll go with the parliamentarians. Yes.
Fantastic. Everybody will expand on their point pretty shortly. Gabriel believes the parliamentarians' position is the right way. Peter Anti, where do you stand? You stand with NATO, the concerns raised by the members of parliament?
Well, I stand with the concerns raised by the members of parliament.
Okay, in other words, okay, you expand pretty shortly. Emmanuel, sure. Hello, Emmanuel.
Hi, Evans.
Where do you stand on this?
Evans, mine is a vehement yes to not. But let me put this in context. I'm not explaining. As far back as 14th July 2022, Joy FM published, made a publication about me making this very point on your very show. I mean, not on this particular show, but in your studios, that ministers and MPs should be compelled to send their children. It is there. Please let them check. So mine is a vehement yes to not position, and I'm even surprised it's taking them this long to see this. It's a basic thing. Even it's a basic thing. It's a commonsensical thing.
Okay.
That's my position.
Great. Okay. Jojo, you say, ask for Jojo. Jojo, you went around. You saw the children sitting on the floor. You brought this to light. Do you see any merit in the argument for Nat, or the merit in the argument for the politicians?
Oh, definitely, I'm going with Nat, because I mean I've been face to face with the situation.
No problem.
And definitely, if we have all our politicians' children attending, and MPs and assemblymen and councillors and even headmasters taking their children to the very school they teach, definitely there will be changes.
Okay, now let's expand on the positions as I've heard. Gabriel and Peter, both of you say you'll side with the two MPs and their concerns with the policy as proposed by Nat. Gabriel, expand. Why?
Yes, thank you, Evans, for having me here, and good evening to all my other panelists here. So, like I said, though there's a good intention behind such a suggestion that those who are in charge of our policy makers and our decision makers can also taste the results of what they are putting out there in terms of education. And so the intention is good, but sitting back and looking at the policies that I analyze and study a lot, I'm much more focused on how feasible the policy is and how it can work. And so to me, I think it's a good idea, but the way to it can be questioned, and it can be questioned on several grounds. One, it's education, as we all know, Article 25 of our Constitution clearly states it is a right, and it's a right which the parents have a much say into it, as far as the kind of education that their children are or what are getting. And so if a public officer puts himself or herself out there to be elected as whatever, as an MP or appointed as a minister, there's also a wife, or let's say the mother, or anybody who also has a say in the child education. And so because of the father, you deprive, you restrict the family that they must enroll their ward in this particular school. Somehow, some way, you are taking some key decisions that the families have to make on their own behalf, out of the family to the state, which I think it goes contrary to our fundamental human right. So like I said, yes, I don't doubt the intentions behind this kind of proposal. The intentions is good, but the way to it, I'm not a lawyer, but looking or sitting back, I can see when it is challenged in court, it can be, I don't think it can stand the test of time.
Gabriel, great point. Stay with me. Dr. Gossenafo, what do you say to Gabriel?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at it from a legal perspective, a human rights perspective, I mean, the answer is yes. But again, for those who are in those public institutions, they also have their human right. And I think, look, let's just look back to a few years. And I'm going to dove my hat out to the former President Rollins. When Ghana rolled out the SHS, what we used to call the JHS back in the day, or the JSS, which became the SSS. Chairman Rollins at the time had to put his kids through that system. I think all the kids, if I'm right, had to go through that system, and that was testament to the fact that he believed in the system that he was bringing. So legally, you might say no, but ethically and morally, you have to have that moral high ground to say that, look, if I'm going to make policies and I'm going to build schools and build systems, I should be so happy to put my kids through it. And it is only at that point that you can now say that I believe that whatever policies I'm enacting and the systems that I'm building, if it's good for me, then if it's good for others, then it should be good for me, or vice versa. So you need to look at it from a strong moral perspective as well. But at the moment, I think if we have to go down that route, it should be a very good thing to deter others. I know we're talking about education, but it saddens me to see our people jumping on the next available flight to go to the UK, to the US for medical care and all of that. And it's the same thing. We need to look at this thing and make it a strong moral argument for this. And it is when we are all eating from this same soup, we will prepare it well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Now, here's what I'm going to do. There's one country that already does this in one way or the other, that NAT itself referred to in putting forth this policy. They are already doing this. And for everybody else who knows education, is that one country that has become the envy of the world in terms of quality education. And that country is Finland. And thankfully, we can connect to Charlotte Winberg. Charlotte Winberg is connecting with us tonight from Finland. Hello, Charlotte. Hello, Charlotte. Please unmute for me if you've muted. Hello, Charlotte. Okay. Hopefully we can get Charlotte's attention and we can get Charlotte into the conversation. I can pick Charlotte's brain how it works in Finland. Okay, let me bring in Peter. Peter Anti. Peter, you heard Dr. Godsenafo. He makes a very strong point. You are in charge of policy. You have the national resources. And you're flying your child outside the country to go in school. Or you've taken the child actually to private school even here in Ghana. And yet you want us to go to the school that you won't take your child to. Hasn't he got a point there?
Yes, I think that as the two my two friends have already indicated, if you look at this from the moral perspective, that's how it's supposed to be. If you are cooking the soup, then you're supposed to taste it. But then you have to also look at it from another angle, that in policy formulation, you ask yourself, is that the only option available that would enable policymakers listen to the cry of the innocent kids who attend public basic school? There are alternatives available that we have to look at. And of course, you look at all the alternatives and you see which of them is more feasible and more implementable. And I that's how I always look at some of these things. So in as much as we feel that might be a good proposition, I think that its implementation will be very difficult. And I say this from this angle. You see, we talk as if the kids in the public schools are even all of them are on the same level. I beg to differ. There are some that are very, very, very suffering. I mean, the resources are not there at all. And I know Jojo who attests to that. And there are some schools that are doing relatively well in Accra, in Cape Coast, in Takrade, in Kumasi. There are some public schools that are doing relatively well. Now, if you force these politicians to take their awards to these public schools, what is going to happen is that you will find this case in the best public basic schools. And the same problem that we are complaining about in terms of the lack of resources in the public basic schools will continue to be there, because some of these basic schools are in the hinterlands. They are in deprived communities. They are in the villages. They are in the rural settings. The public official will not take the word to that public basic school in that village. He will take that child to that public basic school in Accra, in the middle of East Legon and all those prominent places. So at the end of the day, you come back to square zero. You've not achieved anything. And if we want to do this, then it means that we are going to make sure that across board, all public basic schools are going to have the same resources. They are going to have the same whatever it is that they need. Then you would now say that if the child of the minister is in a public basic school in Accra, the same conditions will be felt as the child in a village somewhere. That is the only way we'll be able to achieve this. But we have not been able to even achieve this in other areas. A doctor talked about health. The politicians, when they are sick, they go out. So if you are going to apply this in education, then you are looking at all other sectors too. How feasible is this going to be? That is my reason why I think that it's going to be very difficult for us to implement such a policy. So we look at
Emmanuel. Doesn't Peter have a strong
point? Not at all, unfortunately, not at all. Let me start from, and I've told you that as far back as 22nd July, I was on Joy FM to talk about this. Now, this is the point. You have built a school. Let's even draw this analogy. You built a school. You claim your school is the best. So why are your children schooling in other schools? Now, if you continue raising this issue of morality, are we then saying that our public officials do not have morals? Because if it is the case, if the issue is okay from the moral angle, then I think that we all assume that they are all morally upright. So why don't they do that? Look, let's not even mention Finland. In 2014, in Nigeria, there's a state called Osun State. Then I think the governor was Ayub Beshola. One of the things he did, I know this because I was there running a spelling bee program. One of the things he did was that the very people in his government all bought into the kind of changes he was bringing to the sector. And that marked a significant change in the performance of the students. Now, if you raise the point that the public officials will send their children to Accra and Kumasi, at least that one, we are all in the same boat. And the argument is that once everybody has been compelled, everybody who takes the salary for the consolidated fund has been compelled to do that, we will fix the system. That's the basic thing. I teach, look, Evans, I teach in a Cambridge attached school. So someone will say someone and say, oh, Mr. Apple is privileged. But the point is that I cannot afford to send my children to these international schools. And that is why we must fix the system. It is a very commonsensical thing to do. In any case, Evans, the politicians to be politicians. You tell them. So if you cannot send your children to our own school, our hospitals, then you have no business being a politician. After all, we pay you. Is that not the case, Evans?
Yeah, of course.
So let's leave that space for those who will agree that their children attend our own school, so that we see that, because once their children are there, they will fix the system. That is a guarantee. If the MPs, the ministers cannot do it, let's vote them out. It's as simple as that.
That's very strong. Yes, please. I had my name. Okay, let me go back to our connector who's connecting with us now from Finland very quickly, because I want to get the Finland experience, and I'll come back. I know there are disagreements to the two. We've had two positions for this policy, two positions against. I'll come back. There's a lot more to explore, but let's get ourselves into the shoes of the people of Finland, right? And how they've managed to do this successfully. Hello, Charlotte.
Hi, Jojo.
Hi, great to have you, Charlotte, connect with us. Jojo is here with me. My name is Evans, and great to have you.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes, great to have you.
Hi, Evans.
Great to have you. Charlotte, tell me. So, I mean, what's the practice in Finland where I understand government officials, appointees, are required or feel obliged to take their children to public schools? How does it work?
Well, the thing is, we only have public schools here. I also started thinking, like, do I know anyone who has attended like a private school or something else? But it's like, no, we have a few private schools, but they are like, their reputation is not that good either. So it's just public schools for the win.
so everybody else takes their children to public school. So how is it that the public school system is so strong that the few private schools? Because bet me, if you have we have few private schools in Ghana, and they are the most sought after schools. I tell you, in Ghana, people are paying one term $25,000 for their children to go to school in private school, no matter how, regardless of how few they are. So how come in Finland the dominant school system is a public school system, and everybody else goes there? What has happened? How did that happen?
Well, it's a good question. Then also, like, when I think of the reputation of the private schools, they are not that good. But then again, like, of course, the reputation varies a bit between the public schools. There are some that are considered better, but then again, like, the difference is not that big. It's in some major cities. There are some schools that are considered to be better because you get a higher grade, like their average is a bit higher. But then again, like, the things you learn is the same no matter where you are, because we have like this strong it's decided, it's like a law, like the kids have to learn this while attending school, and when you finish you have to know this and this and this, and the tests, they are the same, the books, they are the same, the groups are the same. The only thing that varies is the teacher, and of course they have some freedom how to implement this system. But and also I think maybe one strong point which speaks for the public schools, we haven't changed them that much during the past year. Like, I don't know when was the last reform, and according to some it can be considered a bit old school, because compared to Sweden, we are more like, we raise our hands before we talk and we sit in lines, and it's not that modern maybe. But then again, yeah, it's getting more and more modern, of course, but yeah, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
I mean, absolutely. So all you've known all your life is that the public school is the best. You've not known anything else.
Yeah, and I don't know anyone who has attended a private school in Finland.
Although
even though I have lived here for more than 30 years, no one.
Although the existing small numbers, everybody else wants to put their children in the public school, and the public offices, obviously, no brainer. That's where they will go to.
Yeah, that's how it is here. And also the universities, they are also, okay, let's not go there. But yeah, public school. Yeah.
Of course. Raymond Akwa is connected with us. He's done a lot of research into this as well. Raymond, so at what point did the people of Finland take that decision to focus on the public school system and make that the envy of everybody else?
No, I think there was a century somewhere in the 60s, there were conversations about, in fact, they invented the term reimagining schools. So they really decided that they were going to give more priority to building better schools for everybody, in a way that when you channel resources, you get education as the basis for development spread across very nicely. So they went about it in a way that sounded very fun. I mean, in an education system that many people would want to say necessarily should focus on all the things we know, they have something that's been structured like teachers coaching students to excel in all they do, and headmasters being instructional leaders who create a culture of collaboration required to innovate. But in fact, to them, what gets tested is what gets taught. And what they structure and call accountability 2.0 is actually what they use there. Unlike other words, and they started getting it in the early 90s, all the awards in the world getting high ranking for education, because a fundamental shift happened. That shift made it very clear that to them, the focus is on innovation and not making students examination ready. And that shift was sold to virtually every institution that school leaders started implementing it across the board. That became their mantra that if you get a child who is innovation ready, it's easier to test the most important things and make sure that they are prepared for the future in the ways that you want to inculcate the very best practices in them. So even though it was found strange, in fact, I mean, there were elements where even in the UK and other Western countries have found it not in tune with the structures they had built over years for more than decades and had actually tested and tried and being used even in the US. But just when rankings were ranking Finland higher than other countries, that's where perhaps others sought to review their own structures to in tune with what was happening in Finland.
Yeah, at what point did they take the decision that if you once you are in public service and you are appointee of the state or the government and you pay with taxpayers' money, then you might as well take your children to the public schools that you're superintending over?
In fact, to them, it was a normal thing to do. I think it was almost like a service charter that first, the guy running a district education unit is automatically supposed to be part of the system. Then politicians had no options. In fact, there were, it was in the 60s or so, where demonstrations were held to indicate that whether you like it or not, people ought to be part of a system that's functioning properly. And that system is the public school system. What some of them were doing were pulling students out of the country to other schools elsewhere. That they stopped completely. They didn't stop by just issuing a fiat. They stopped by saying the funding available to a politician should not be able to, when you are getting public money, you should put the money back into a public system. And since you are not paying for that level of education, there's no way you should be exploring the other ones elsewhere. So way back, in fact, there's a rule that was tested later on, even at the EU courts, because other countries were trying to copy it. And this was way back in the 80s.
It seems like you know more about this than I do.
Charlotte, thank you very much for connecting. I'm grateful that you connected with your thoughts on this from Finland.
Yeah, but I could also tell one more thing about the Finnish.
Please do.
Yeah, if you don't mind. It's also like, I think it's part of being like giving everyone equal rights. Like no matter whether you're rich or poor, like everyone should have the right to education, and to like it shouldn't discriminate whether you are rich or poor, but everyone should learn these same things. And now recently it has changed that everyone has to attend school until they are 18 years old. Before it was 16, but now they have extended this to make sure that you can't leave school before you are 18 as well. And one more thing before I leave is that we used to have the same system as Sweden, but they have changed their school system, like their educational system. They have changed it many times, whereas in Finland we have maintained it quite similar to what it once was. And nowadays, when we compare like the Finnish and the Swedish school system, it's quite, there are some differences. So maybe it's also to be consistent about what you're doing. Maybe that's also a winning system, and making it open to everyone if possible.
Absolutely.
So yes,
Thank you very much for connecting.
Thank you for having me.
For sharing those thoughts with us from Finland, and that's Charlotte Wimbeck there connecting us from Finland. And Raymond, thanks to you also for connecting and explaining the background there. I want to come back to my connectors on now we understand a bit. It's happening somewhere. As Raymond explained, they took a decision somewhere that before all this great transformation in the Finnish system, many of the politicians and the civil servants and government appointees were taking their children abroad, and then the policy came and said, look, if you were doing so, you can't spend that money in another economy, bring it down into the local economy. I mean, I want to come back to you, Gabriel. I mean, if you listen to that and the current transformation that everybody wants to copy when it comes to the Finnish system, isn't that what we should be doing as well? Because now, as the Charlotte explains, they've done this for so long, for decades, that the public system, this public school system, is now the That's all she knows. She's been there for 30 years. She can't even tell you with private school functions as well as a public school. Isn't that a benefit of doing this? Gabriel.
Yes, thank you, Evans, once again. What I would say is, yeah, if you say you've made public
Struggling to
schools
hear you,
better,
Gabriel. If you can adjust or speak directly into the microphone.
yes, can you hear me?
It's better, yes.
Yes, I'm saying if you say that you've made public schools better, and yet your award is in private school, I will call it you've been just tragically inconsistent. And so, on the part of the politicians that the focus is on now, you are just being inconsistent that you made it better, but yet your award is in private school. And I think you can be punished only at the pools if that is your decision. But as to forcing them through policy to do that, I think it's problematic. So now, what we need to focus is to how to make the public schools better. I think that's where the focus should be. How we can make it better, taking some examples from the Finland experiences as Charles shared with us. I think that's where we should focus on. And I think the key things that we need to do in our public schools, most of these people in higher authority don't like these public schools because we have been taught to just not to educate, but just to indoctrinate. And so most people like these international schools because of the curriculum that they have, the advanced modern ways of doing things. How can we do those kind of things in our part of the world, in Ghana, so that we can also have people not even considering the private school like it's happening in Finland? So I think that now the curriculum that we are being built, the new curriculum that we hear the Ministry of Education are coming up with, should be focusing more on educating the child and also coming up with the infrastructure. I strongly have a big problem because I think now our education system in Ghana is focusing more on the upper secondary level, leaving the basic level, I mean the primary and the basic level. And if you see a lot of reports coming out just for some few days ago, some students drawing in a board, it's basic level. So I think we are neglecting the basic level. And
yeah, but okay, so Gabriel, I have a question for you. Maybe Peter, when you say we are neglecting, who is neglecting? Is it you and I, or all of us, or the duty bearers who we place there to supervise the education system?
Obviously, I'm talking about the duty bearers, the decision makers. And
so that's where the argument goes, that if that duty bearer had his child in that Saito or the public school, and not president asked me that question, can you imagine the district education director's child sitting on the floor or riding in a boat to gain education?
I can't imagine that, obviously. I can never imagine that. But I am thinking about the suggestion that is being made. Either it is implementable. That's what I'm thinking about. And I think it is not implementable if we say we should make a policy to force them to do this and that. I don't think it's implementable. And so we have to continue pushing the duty bearers to make sure that they are making the basic level better for all of us, so that people will be thinking about public schools and not always focusing on the private schools. I think that's the best way to
So you raised a question about implementation. Dr. Godsing-Afo, you are an educationist. If this is to work, how can it work? How should it be implemented in a way that works?
Yeah, so I'm just going to pick a few examples from the UK as well. So the UK has got a lot of alternatives. UK has got private schools. And I think it's Charlotte, right? The lady from Finland.
Yes.
I can't, for the life of me, mention as many private schools in the UK as probably I'll be able to do with the public schools. But within the UK space, what we've done is that we've got state-maintained schools, we've got academies, we've got independent schools. So we've got independent schools, we've got grammar schools. So I've got 4 kids. I've got some of my kids in grammar schools. I've got some of my kids in state-maintained schools. And you've got the church schools. So what they've done, and these are all public schools, government has a very strong stake in this. But what the government does is that if you've got a very bright child that can fit into the grammar school, the exam is open to all. Okay, so you write what we call a selective exam. if you pass that exam, you get into the grammar school, and it's open to all. It's not something that is an elitist thing or something that is a class-based system. Whereas what we've done in Ghana, we've got the private schools. And I'm sad to say this, and I'm going to make a passionate appeal here. And Evans, please check for me. I want you to really help me with this. I don't want to be wrong on this, but I think the last time I checked, unfortunately, and I'm going to say unfortunately, we're saying that it's their human right. But I dare to say this, that some public officials, their fees of their kids is being paid for in the private schools in dollars by public funds, by the government, by the from the public purse. How do we just suppose this with the human rights thing that we're talking about here in terms of the poor child whose mom is working her socks off, standing in the sun for 12 hours, trying to make ends meet, and then cannot get into these top schools? When we are talking about policy implementation, we need to look at how can we bring the private sector to come together with the public sector. And for example, let me give an example with this boarding a free education thing. And I don't have any problem with that, but I've said it last week. I will not be giving free boarding school to anybody, because at the end of the day, even in the UK, boarding school is for the rich, it's for the privileged. We cannot just make it free for everyone. So we need to review that policy. We need to go back, look at some of these policies, where the money is going. And if we're talking about equity, spreading the resources, we need to look at the foundations, and we need to also bring in the public sector, the private sector. Let me give a quick example before I hand over. When we're doing this free education thing, there are still schools that, for the SHS, private schools that are now empty. Why? Because they could have the spaces. All we could have done is that if you want to send your child to a private school, we're going to give you the same what do you call it, fee or grant, whatever it is that we're going to be giving for the free boarding house for you to get into the public school. Let us just come into contact, have that synergy with the private sector, and work together. But no one should be paying higher with government funds for the wards to get in, whereas we are neglecting what we're doing here. And look at what Rawlings did in 1987. Rawlings could have used the opportunity to get her child. Let me use Zanato, for example. Zanato could have gone into the old system, but Rawlings left Zanato in there. She went to Wesley Girls, and she was part of the system. So this was a system that he advocated for. Morally, he did a high thing. He took the moral high ground by putting his daughter into that system, through the mill, so he can now walk around. Unfortunately, it's no more, but at least the lady can now say that I went through the system, and this is what his father stood for. Yeah, so a public official should have that moral high ground to come back and then decide, look, if it is good for whoever is in there, it is good for my children as well. And until it is touching their families and their kids, trust me, they will never take it seriously, unfortunately.
Peter Auntie, you've raised a question about, this could be a human rights violation. The politicians did same as well. But what about making it a prerequisite for entering into the public service or for being appointed by the president or becoming a government appointee, such that if you want to become an MP, one of the prerequisites is that you agree that once you get that position, then one of the requirements is that your children go to public school, so that you knew before you accepted to take that position that it comes with a job, right? Is that something that could work?
Evans, from where I sit, one of the biggest challenges we have had in this country in terms of policies is the fact that we don't think through policies. We always want to do things, react to issues as and when they arise, and then we formulate something. At the end of the day, we are not able to get any meaningful thing out of it, and it doesn't solve anything. We know that politicians are supposed to file something. Is it their properties or something before they assume office? I think you are in the media. You know how that thing is going. So we would pass a law, and then we would ask that as you are entering the public service, these are the things that you are supposed to do, and people will still violate it. The point I'm making is you have to get a policy that will really address the issue. We are all talking about this, and we are forgetting that the secondary schools that we are talking about, and we are saying that the kids, I think the NAT president even made mention of it, that the case of these public officials are in the secondary schools. Go and look at the secondary schools that these kids attend. They attend the Wesley Girls, they attend the Achimotes, the Infante Pims. They don't attend Jokoa Secondary School or Konongo Dumase secondary school. They don't. So you can do this policy, and the case of these big men will find themselves in the topmost public schools. And in those schools, you will go there, they will get all the needed resources, whereas that child in Pandai will still be lying on the floor because that politician will not know or will not even feel, because his child will not go, he will not go and enroll his child in that public.
Peter, so I guess the point you make that this will only deepen the disparity.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Hold on. Let me get Emmanuel to respond to that. Emmanuel, isn't that a big part of the problem? Why this policy that Nat is pushing will not work? That if you did, then Peter's point becomes reality. And there's a clear example he cited of what we're seeing at the senior high level. You just replicate that at the basic level.
No, my brother. Let's look at this dispassionately. You see, what we are talking about is a law that would have been occasioned by the people of the country. Now, I like the way you put it when you said, what if it's a prerequisite? So the reason why politicians are not declaring their assets is because we are not enforcing the law. It's as simple as that. When we enforce the law, they will abide by the laws. In any case, let me say this. We've cited Finland. We've cited UK, probably United States of America. I've even talked about Nigeria. In these Western countries, apart from Nigeria, politicians and public officials serve. But in Ghana, they are served. This is the distinguishing factor. In these countries that we have mentioned, the public officer offers a service to the people. In this country, we, the citizens, rather serve them. So why would they take us seriously? And here we are talking about moral issue. Are we saying that if you are a minister, you are taking over 25,000 Ghana cedis, 30,000 Ghana cedis a month? Are we saying that because you take 30,000, it is your right to choose any school your child will attend and force all of us to? I am saying that it's very simple. And Professor Afo has given a beautiful example of Flight Lieutenant James Rollins. May God bless his soul. That if you think what you are offering is good enough, let everybody be there. And I'm sorry, Peter's point doesn't hold, because even if the politicians find their children in these top class schools, at least the resources will be provided. I mean, what you're talking about is basic resources, Evans. Chairs, tables. If we get them, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If Joy FM had not chanced upon the fact that children are writing on their bellies, we wouldn't be having this conversation, Evans. If I'm wrong, you can correct me.
Oh, no,
because this disparity has been there for God knows how long. But, Evans, one last point. From 1984 to 1989, I was at a farm secondary school. I'm not that old for O level. Even that time, you could count the number of privileged people whose children were in these top class schools, the international schools. You had to be rich and affluent to send your child to a GIS, to the SOS, to the DPS, and all these big schools. Today, it has become a privilege. Go to any international school, I can bet you can count no less than 30% of children there whose parents are public officials. The point is, how do they make their money? So let's not defend this. Look, if we want it, let's come together like the way we came together as a people to prevent the e-levy from holding. After all, we are their employers. We employ them. We give them our mandate. And so let's make it a prerequisite. Let's debate it. And I'm saying that I'm so disappointed that it has taken that all this while to this. Even my students in class 10 know this. That if you believe in what you have, enjoy it yourself.
And I guess that's a basic moral principle behind the point that Nat was pushing. Listen, Emmanuel, Peter, Auntie, Gabriel, Dr. Godson Affle, thank you very much for connecting with us. And I got a parent who just connected with us on our WhatsApp platform. He says this is very serious in Ghana about public schools. My boys are in one of this school. The class size is 95 in a class because it's only government school in the area doing well. Very serious situation. And his name is Abusa Jackson. Thankfully, he connects with us on the phone. Hello, Abusa.
Yes, Evans.
Great that you connected with us with your own unique story as a father.
Yeah.
Yes, go
Evans,
on.
I'm happy to talk to you today on this your program. I'm one of the best listeners of Joy FM. Without Joy FM, there is no Ghana.
Thank you, Abusa. So your child is in the school, in the public school. Class size is 95.
Yes, Evans.
And how is she coping, or he's coping?
He's a boy. As for me, I can say my child is doing well, but I have to hire another teacher in home for them. The teacher just left right now. I'm listening to the program. The teacher have to come this evening and have class with them. The teacher just left right now and go back home.
So you are
because if they cannot do so, they cannot do well. And Evans, it's very serious problem we are having in this country, and nobody cares. Now I'm happy that Joy FM is bringing this thing on board, and I want Joy FM to continue hitting this side. We are going to this 2024. Let put pressure on them, so that for me, I agree with the NAT president also. Let's force them. They will do something about it. I know what I'm saying. I don't want to say much on the air.
So you believe that the public officials should all be compelled to take their children to the school like the school that your child is in right now?
Yes. Once you are preparing a food for somebody to eat, you have to test it. You have to test it. It's not only our school, Evans, please, you people just check children's hospital. Go and see their washroom. That's the place when my children get sick, that's the place I send them. Go and see children's washroom, Evans. It's very serious in this country because they are not feeling the pain, so nobody cares. If their children are feeling those pain, they will care, Evans. Today, they will change everything. They can do it.
Thank you very much, Gosing, and that's a parent there, but passionate about the education of their child. I'm grateful that you joined us for with your thoughts on Ghana Connect, and I want to hear more of your thoughts as it's been coming in, and Papa is joining me with that now.